just going to introduce Dr. Harvey, who is our first speaker. So Dr. Harvey serves as the Associate Vice President / Dean of Students at Nazareth College. She brings 18 years experience in higher education in the areas of campus life, including student success and retention, enrollment management, new student programs, residential life, and leadership development. Her work with bystander intervention programs and transfer student initiatives has been recognized at both the regional and national level. She has worked at both public and private institutions and serves as an adjunct professor in area higher education programs. Dr. Harvey earned her bachelor's degree in mathematics as well as a minor in educational studies at SUNY Fredonia, her master's degree in student personnel administration at Kansas College, and her Doctor of Education focused in educational leadership and administration from the University of Rochester. And now we would like to welcome Dr. Harvey.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lily, for that introduction. I'm just going to get myself queued up here. I'm going to share a screen and hopefully you all can see the PowerPoint that is in front of you. And we're going to get started. First, thank you to ALD for this invite. And thank you for all of you for being here today. I'm excited to join you. I'm actually based in your headquarter hometown, if you will. So I'm actually in Rochester, New York myself. And I'm on my campus of Nazareth College this afternoon. And you know what? There's no other place I'd rather be than with all of you here today. So thank you again for that invite. I do have a couple of questions and prompts to have you all engage with throughout our time here today. So please, if you will, join me when you see something pop up on the screen. We're going to use the chat feature here on our Zoom. And so we're going to get started. If you will, go back in time with me for a little bit. And I'm actually going to share a story with you. This here is Mrs. Ackley, and Mrs. Ackley was my second grade teacher. And she's someone that I've remained in touch with 30 plus years later, and someone that I frequently visit with. And when I think about being a change maker, and I think about that first moment in time without maybe knowing what the word change maker meant, to me, Mrs. Ackley was a change maker. You see, I was a student, obviously went to school, and I was an only child. And so school sometimes was a little bit difficult for me. I was around my family a lot. That's who I knew. And so going away from school oftentimes for me was difficult because I was separated from my family after spending so many years in their presence and together. And it was in Mrs. Ackley's classroom that I really decided, or not decided, but really was exposed to that whole notion of learning and curiosity. And so I don't know how many of you remember your second grade teacher, or even any of your teachers, maybe from your younger K through 12 education, but Mrs. Ackley was that person who can make learning fun, to the point where you didn't even know you were learning. And so for me, I have really fond memories of some of those first books that really encouraged me to grab onto reading and really take that in as an interest. And so I remember reading Charlotte's Web and James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as part of Mrs. Ackley's classroom. And lessons in science, like when you got to watch tadpoles turn into frogs, and raising butterflies to be released at the end of the school year. And those are just really prominent memories that I still have of Mrs. Ackley and her classroom, and what she was able to really do in that environment to really provide that launching pad for me as I saw myself as a future educator. I think for me, it was a moment in time that I saw somebody in a professional role, and probably was first introduced as to when someone asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's a moment that I can remember where I said, I want to be Mrs. Ackley. And while I'm not exactly in a second grade classroom today, there is still a core component of the things that I learned from that classroom experience that really I bring with me to my role as an educator on a college campus. But it was in that classroom environment that I really saw Mrs. Ackley create change and really make learning fun. And yes, of course, teach to what she needed to cover across topics, but also really expand and make learning fun for all of us in that classroom. And so for me, she's somebody that I would consider a change maker who did better for the greater good, who brought that curiosity and positivity and authenticity with her into the classroom every day. And so as we go throughout our time here this afternoon, keep in mind, I want you to think about, who do you consider a change maker in your life? Because that's something we're going to come back to at the end of our time here together. So what I'd like you to do next is, what comes to mind when you hear the word change maker? And if you could just drop that in the chat. And then I'm going to ask my friends, either Eileen or Trish, if you could maybe share what some of our participants are sharing in the chat. So what comes to mind? What are a couple of words, phrases that you hear when you hear the word change maker?
Okay, so a few things coming in, Kim: innovative and empathetic, boldness, vision for the future, someone that makes an impact on the world, moving, causing an improvement that is moving for a group, impacting again, boldness, role model, visionary, innovator, making a difference, influential, inspiring.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And again, if you're still putting it in the chat, please do, so we can have so we can capture all of your thoughts. But certainly that role model, someone that's a leader, someone that's compassionate, someone that wants to do something for the greater good. Absolutely. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. So by nature of definition, right, I'm an educator and I'm on a campus, so I have to bring you the definition in which really grounds us here today when you think about being a change maker. And so it's really someone that takes action. And I'll give you a moment to read what's on the screen in front of you. But when you think about being a change maker, it's someone that's a doer, someone that's going to ignite, take action. I think we can probably all think of situations where we have been a part of in a room, part of a club or organization, part of a committee, and everyone looks to everyone to say, well, who's going to be the first to speak in the room? Who's going to be the first one to volunteer? Or who's going to be the one that throws an idea out to get us going? And you know, when you have a group full of people, right, and especially all of us on this call here today, you know, I consider all of you to be change makers on your campuses, whether you are a student leader, whether you are an advisor to a group. You have this really great ability to enact change. And change often, right? Sometimes when we think about being a change maker, we think about, you know, change makers, you know, big names like Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela, right? And yes, absolutely, I would consider those individuals to be change makers, but there's also change that we can influence and that we can be a part of on our individual campuses, in our individual communities. And as you continue to grow as leaders and go out into your careers, you have an ability to bring change forward. Certainly being a change maker also invites collaboration and really being able to work with one another. And so that you're able to bring people around a common cause to address a problem, to work towards something greater. You've probably heard the expression, but you know, as you come into leadership roles, leave someplace better or something better than what you found it. And I think really at the core, that's what I think about when we think about becoming a change maker. It's being able to identify a challenge or a problem, and then being able to identify solutions with others. I don't know that change making can necessarily happen from an individualistic lens. And so that's really the opportunity there to build relationships and bring others together around common challenges and problems that you may find you know, within your community, on your college campus, in your greater workplace. And then you can think on a more macro level as it relates to in society in general, the country, the world, in that sense. So here's some examples of change making. So when you're thinking about, well, what does this look like? And why is change making important? You know, certainly as we look at it from the lens of being on a college campus, it's a way to continue to make your college campuses more inclusive, especially when we see problems or groups of individuals not fitting in or not having that overall sense of belonging. And so in your leadership role, through your organization here, through your additional roles that you may have on your college campuses, how can you really think about enacting change so that you create a greater sense of belonging for all members of your campus community? Other ways that it looks like speaking up. This may be in class. It may be through a discussion forum. It may be online by using social media in a positive way. It may be bringing ideas and thoughts through artistic expression and different forms of art to be able to start the dialogue and have individuals come around a common cause, to be able to identify inequities or injustice that may be a part of your campus community, your larger organization, within your workplace as you're involved in internships, externships, clinical practices, and being able to identify what that may be and be part of the solution. It's about looking at overall wellness. Our well-being is at the core of everything that we do and how we show up in the different spaces that we're a part of. And so thinking about how you keep that as a central component to what it means to be a change maker. And we'll come back to that when I show a diagram in a few slides. It's also taking a look and having an understanding of the communities that you're a part of. So for some of us, we may go to school outside of the area or community that we grew up in. And that new community in which we then become a part of on a college campus has different issues and has been socialized in a different way, perhaps from where we grew up or where we might call home. And so that may be true as well as you think about your future place of work. Some of you may choose to work outside of your current state or return home to your communities. And so having an understanding of what are the issues that your immediate community faces and how can you contribute as that change maker. It's also taking a look at your own talents, right? Your talents and how you spend your time and what is purposeful to you and where some of your interests are. Because I think that's how we can show up in these spaces to enact change and be a change maker in our communities when we're really being thoughtful about how we're spending our time and what drives our own passions and interests and how can we contribute to the greater good of things. And then it's creating awareness. And I would imagine as many of you are involved on your own campuses, there are often causes that come out through your individual clubs and organizations. It may be service through your ALD chapter. It may be something related to your academic program of study. And I find this on my campus as I work with students. They're often creating greater awareness and or campaigns, if you will, to bring that information forward. And so that's very much a core component or an example, if you will, of change making and what that actually looks like so that you can help advance the common goals for the overall good of what you're trying to work towards. So with that, if you could in the chat, what traits does someone need to exhibit or possess in order to be a change maker? So what are some of those traits or characteristics of an individual? When you think about being a change maker, as you think about a change maker as a leader, if you could drop those in the chat.
Want me to read some, Kim? Or
yeah, that would be really helpful so I don't accidentally X out of this Zoom call.
Right. Where did Kim go? She left it. Open-minded, empathy, kindness, a good listener, risk taker, persistence, trustworthy, accountable, driven, diligent, adaptable, generous, creative. These are some great ones. I want to be all of these. Proactive, honest, and a lot of empathy, a lot of empathetic, diligent, flexible, positive, thoughtful.
Wonderful. Yeah, I see that a lot. I appreciate the one that says common sense as well, right? This doesn't have to be, right? This isn't rocket science, what I'm here talking about. It is things that we can honestly make a change tomorrow or identify that change this afternoon in terms of what we want to work towards as we think about ourselves and our peers and those that are also a part of your chapters as change makers, and where you have that ability to influence among your peers, but also on your college campus. Again, so you can make your college campus or leave your college campus better than how you found it as well. So I'm gonna keep moving here. So I saw a lot of these words and or versions of these words, right? So when you think about Changemaker traits and some of those core characteristics of a change maker, right? You have that sense of curiosity, that creativity or that innovation to be able to identify the problem. You're able to communicate, flexibility, a doer, positive, respectful, looking to see how you can bring your skills to be able to help, right? And so that's what I mean by skillful reciprocity, right? And so thinking about what that looks like as you think about yourself as a change maker. Empathy was up there a lot, and we're going to come back to that when I show you an overall way in which we look at change making. And that absolutely is a core component of being a change maker. And being someone that can contribute to overall change. It's also being self-aware. And there's a difference there. I think self-awareness and self-confidence are two different things, but it's more so about being aware of how you show up in a space and how you communicate and how are you being that leader and creating those spaces that others can show up as their authentic selves, as they can communicate and bring their own ideas for exchange as well. So we know change makers, right? And I would say many of you, all of you here on this call, you have the knowledge and skills. You are seen as leaders on your campuses. And so change makers have some have some knowledge and skills to bring about positive change. They can work on teams and work through collaborative ways or collaborative measures to be able to include others and bring others in. So again, something you may identify something that you'd like to work on your campus or in your future workplace. And then part of your responsibility of being that change maker leader is bringing others in and making them aware of the greater cause and goal of what you're trying to work towards. And I think for many of us, we want to know the why. Why is this important? And I think that's something to keep in mind as you think about how you communicate that and how you bring others in to be able to work towards that. And then, of course, you know, there's ways when you think about change making. All of us are in class, whether we're teaching, learning, a combination of both. And there's ways in which we can work and bringing things together and really blend the learning that's happening on, I'll use your college campuses. So while yes, you may go to class or clinicals or internship, there's a lot of learning and a lot of ways in which you can enact change through your co-curricular experience, but also through your classroom as well. And so that's a way in which I hope you can see change making or change makers showing up on your campus. Also, change makers have a heightened ability to understand the experiences of others. And so very much that's where the empathy comes into play. And having an understanding and really thinking about things through the lens of others. You maybe have heard of the term empathy mapping. And so when you think about some characteristics of an individual or things, and then framing a conversation around that, so that you're really making sure you're being inclusive in the ways in which you're designing or working through that change, so that you're able to really meet the needs of those that you're serving. Change makers also are able to apply strategies when they're addressing challenges. And I think in a lot of ways, that's where that core communication and perseverance comes through. When you think about the need to be able to communicate messages multiple times with different people across differences, And that is something that Changemakers are constantly working on and bringing forward as they're working towards making the ultimate or reaching their ultimate goal of what they're working with. Changemakers also have that greater self-awareness about their own experiences and what are they bringing when they show up at the table, and how can some of those experiences help shape the future in which they're working towards. And so very much, you know, at the core, you're bringing values with you as a change maker, and you're bringing forward those things that you're most passionate about, what you really value, and how you may spend your time, and where you want to spend your time and energy, of how you can connect and really create those opportunities for your community to be able to explore change that can ultimately result in thinking through an equity mindset, right? Like, how do you make things more equitable in your communities as a change maker? And then the last bullet here that you see on your screen, being able to bring your own talents and things that that come natural to you, that you're naturally good at, things that bring you joy in how you work with others, and where you can consider or view yourself as being that asset for the greater change. So I have up here in front of me, I'm bringing this from my own institution, but any of you could remove the word Nazareth College from that. And ultimately, this is what we have when we think about at the core of being a change maker. And so I'm actually going to start on my screen. It's the top right with perseverance. And ultimately, right, you can look at what the description is there, but that's really having that ability to lead. And lead through challenges and lead through the uncertainty. We all have those moments in time where people are looking to us for the answer, or what the answer is, right? And often that comes with wearing the role of the leader, or having the leader hat on. But change makers are able to work through maybe not always having the answer, but being able to step back and get others to weigh in to ultimately come to either a consensus, or be able to gather enough information to then make the informed decision of where you should be headed. Empathy, again, that came up in the chat as a core central component, and I would absolutely agree. Empathy is at the core of building trust. It's at the core of collaboration and having others engaged. When they feel as though they have an equal seat at the table, and individuals are going to be able to contribute and feel comfortable speaking up and contributing their ideas from their own perspectives, from their own lenses, that very much is going to result in a greater change for everyone as you're able to come together. And so having empathy is very, very important. We look at things through a global lens here when we're talking about change making, and that can be from individuals who are represented at the table, but also how is this change going to impact the global community? And so in this respect of when I say global community, we do look at our college community as the global community. But beyond that, we look across the city of Rochester, of where we're located, and how will these decisions impact our global community in that sense. And then you can take global citizenship or global community out beyond the borders of the United States in that sense. And so being able to really think about how we have all been socialized, and where are some of those historical and social factors that have exist and are rooted in systemic ways. How are they still showing up, and what do we need to do to really unpack and explore, sometimes dismantle, so that we really can evolve in a positive framework for that overall change making. Inclusivity, I'm going to keep going through these quickly so we can get to the last couple of slides here, but certainly making sure that everyone has a voice and you have representation as you're enacting change, whether that be within your chapter, in your overall organizations on your campus, or when you're coming to the table and brainstorming. Is everyone represented? Well-being is certainly a core component there as you think about your own personal well-being, as you think about financial well-being, social well-being, career well-being. It's all inclusive when I say that. And so it's really thinking about, where is your greater purpose? Where is that sense of happiness and joy coming from that can really help propel you to bring forward those emotional, intellectual pieces to enact change, and incorporate all of that, from physical space, physical well-being, emotional well-being, social capital. As you think about all those pieces coming together and talking through what that change may be. And then lastly, we talked about self-awareness on one of the other slides, being able to really think about, how have your own experiences shaped you as an individual? What are some of your natural talents and strengths that you're bringing with you? And also, where are some of those limitations that you may have, where through building a team and really being intentional with inclusivity of who's around the table, you can lean on others to bring forth some of the ways in which you may be limited as that leader. And then ultimately, being a change maker, at the core of the change maker is leading with positivity. And so being part of the solution, being action oriented, and looking through things and leading with a positive lens as a whole. And so that's a little bit in terms of the core components, if you will, when you think about your role as a change maker leader. And so with that, I know I went through that quickly, but if you could, in the chat, how does your view of Changemaker apply to yourself and your leadership role or roles on your campus? And so ultimately, I'm asking you to really think about, how do you see yourself as a change maker? And maybe you have a quick example that you can drop in the chat, 1 to 2 sentences, or something that maybe has sparked in your mind and now you're curious of, gee, this might be a problem on my campus, or something I want to work towards in a future internship as it relates to my career. So let's take a few moments. This one might take a little bit longer to try to briefly get your comments in there. But how does your view of Changemaker apply to yourself and your leadership role or roles on your campus? And if you could drop those in the chat for us. So take a few minutes and think about that. So I see some people talking about supporting fellow peers, being a listener, being a leader who listens, being more involved with peers, professionally and personally. Connecting with fellow students in classes that they've already taken. Working on core components like collaboration, helping others see the importance of that. Being open to different perspectives and not just those that align with our own. These are great. I look forward to reading through more of these. But it's very true of what you're sharing and what you're seeing on your own campuses. So please do keep sharing those reflections in the chat, because I know this one's a little bit longer to think through. But in terms of, right, if only we had infinite time, right? And we do have to be very, very careful with how we spend our time, as being a leader is not what we went to college to do, right? You all are studying and have academic programs that you're a part of, but where can you focus some of your time and influence as it relates to making change in your communities? And again, that community may be on your campus, it might be in your home, it might be in your future place of work. I think what we've talked about here today, you can continue to take with you and carry with you throughout your careers as well. And so there's, I have three things here. There's a lot of different ways to enact change, some for the better, some for not, right? And if we can all just acknowledge change can be scary. I think for me, just how I approach this is I thrive in change. I find change exciting, but I'm also an active participant when there is change happening in my life, in my workplace, in my communities. I'm choosing to be a part of it. And I think, through that lens of really thinking about that change maker identity and being a leader, it's really looking at things through a positive lens and where you can ultimately make things better. And so, of course, right, we need to plan, we need to think about a strategy. How do we communicate that strategy? I think a lot of people get lost when you're trying to make change, when they don't know what the plan is or what does the overall roadmap look like. And any ways we can help communicate ahead of time may squelch some of those that may not be as adaptable to change. But thinking about it from your lens as a leader, you have that ability to lead with empathy and also lead with that communication and activate. So then how do you get others who want to also be a part of that change? And how do you bring authentic attention around that, knowing that whatever you may work on in terms of creating change as a chapter or as a student leader on your campus, ultimately you're working on something that others have an interest in too, which will create a greater energy and synergy as you're looking to bring forward the change. And then I think the last one is, I use the word evolve because I don't know that there's always a set roadmap when we're enacting change in our community. And oftentimes we learn a lot of different things along the way, in which then we have to alter, pivot, maybe switch up a way in which we were working. And so how are you using the information you're learning as you're thinking about your change, the change that you're working on, and moving with that so that ultimately you're ending with a really great product? Or maybe there's a new opportunity in the change that you originally set off to work on that becomes something that is greater in nature based on new information that you learned and by engaging with others. And so with that, I believe this is my last thing I'm going to ask you to drop in the chat here during our time. So we've covered a lot of different things here today. We've talked a little bit about what is change, who is a change maker, what defines a change maker, what are some of those traits. I shared with you my own story of someone in my life that I consider a change maker. So I would ask you, who is someone you consider a change maker and why? And maybe that's a family member, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's somebody in your community, maybe it's a friend who lives down the hall from you on your campus, or you share a residence with off campus. So who is someone you consider a change maker and why? And just some closing thoughts as you're dropping those in the chat. I don't know about you, but I really like the author, Brene Brown. I think she writes about a lot of different things. And going back to, again, some of our earlier comments here today, when we talked about empathy, I mean, that's very much at the core of her work, right? Empathy and authenticity. And so I think about being a change maker, and at the core, I found a couple of quotes that really, really resonated with me as I was thinking about today, and I hope resonate with you as well. It's really at the core of being a change maker is showing up, putting in the time, letting ourselves be seen, letting those comments, our thoughts be heard, and really being a part of the ending. Right. So when we enact change, again, we're looking to make things better than how we found it. And so essentially, right, we are part of writing the remainder of that story or that chapter in the work we do as leaders in our community. And so it's not a matter of if you're a change maker. I really, truly believe as you're part of this organization, you are change makers on your campuses and in your community, and you have a lot of opportunity to be able to work with your your peers, your leadership in your communities to enact that change. And so hopefully something's resonated with you here today. I've really enjoyed my time spending it with you, and look forward to kind of going back and looking through our chat here today, and want to just say thank you. Thank you again for participating. I really, really do appreciate the thoughts that have been shared.
So thank you. Let's give him a big thank you through possible emojis, reactions, whatever. But thank you. That was really wonderful.